You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome to the Beyond Atheism podcast, with me, Nathan Alexander, and my co-host, Todd. Moving beyond questions of God's existence, this podcast asks, what's next in a world without God? If you're enjoying the show so far, make sure to like and subscribe, rate and review, and consider supporting us on Patreon.
After almost a year of Beyond Atheism, it is time to take a brief look back and take stock of what we've learned from interviewing academics, activists, researchers, and thinkers. This podcast was originally meant as an open-ended exploration of what the world might start to look like, what would become possible as atheism, agnosticism, and a lack of religious belief grow, while religion and religious power start to wane. Today, we'll go through 10 of the biggest takeaways from 2021. Welcome to Beyond Atheism. Nathan, welcome to the year in review.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to you as well.
So it's been, I guess, 11 months since we started.
11 months, yeah. The first one we did is in February of last year, yeah.
So there's 12 months in a year. We've done it for 11 months, and we have 10 biggest takeaways.
Yes.
Why 10?
It's just a nice round number. Yeah.
It is pretty perfect. It's the decimal system. And these are the clickbaitiest of numbers.
Exactly, yeah. Which is important.
So without further ado, Nathan, what did you think was, I mean, these are in no particular order.
Yeah.
What was one of the biggest takeaways for you? This will be our first one.
Yeah. One thing I took away was that there are many different pathways to secularization.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that there's many different ways you can arrive at a society that has a high number of non-religious people. And so we talked about some of these different ways in several episodes. For example, one of them, what we talked about with Tina Block, who's written about the Pacific Northwest. So that's like in Canada, or Western province of British Columbia, then in the U.S., Washington State. I think, was there one other one as well?
I think Oregon.
Oregon, right? Okay. So there's a different way to get it there, is that it's sort of unique characteristics of that region, and a history of like many people migrating there, maybe even like a single people migrating there without family connections, and this can sort of lead to people not having that need for a community, or like sort of a religious community in the way,
or even wanting it, which was a fascinating thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very structural argument, and it was based on things like they didn't, like the work, the type of work that was done, logging, intense work that was 7 days a week, didn't leave time for church, so people wouldn't go to church. It's amazing, right? It's kind of exogenous. It's not a decision that people make. It's about the terrain and the geography and the movement of people and the type of work they're doing, and poof, right? Religion dies out pretty rapidly.
Yeah. But then you have other cases. Another case we talked about was the Soviet Union, with Victoria Smolkin. And obviously that case is much more where it's sort of engineered from the top down. where the state kind of plays an active role in trying to, on the one hand, shut down churches and things like this, while on the other trying to promote atheism.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
fascinating case because it's not always trying to get rid of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it has a nested thing of like the really interesting things that we learned. One of my favorite takeaways from that was that the atheists in the Soviet Union after, I think after the 40s, were complaining about the Soviet Union not being atheist enough,
Mm-hmm.
being too supportive of religion
Yeah.
and actively, literally actively supporting religion. But that it was state directed, party directed, intentionally done, and it had some measure of success. We can't disagree with that. It did. It had cultural effects that still last to this day, such as the sort of the non-religious marriage ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, that's the interesting thing. I mean, that they were probably not as successful as the some of the Soviet leadership would have liked, but I think they definitely succeeded in certain ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all throughout the Eastern Bloc, we know that like there's this state-directed atheism. We're going to make this atheist state. One of the legacies is that in the sort of Eastern Bloc countries, Latvia and Estonia, very, very atheist today, highly secular societies, very irreligious. And right across the Baltic from them, you have another, the other set of the most secular, the least religious countries in the world: Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. But they had a different path.
Yeah. So that one we talked just a couple episodes ago with Anton Jansen about Sweden in particular. It was a case, I think, that it was not top down like the Soviet Union, but it was the case that sort of like a social democratic party took power kind of in the early 20th century, and then they enacted various reforms for social safety nets and so on. Well, at the same time, sort of steadily kind of chipping away at church power, but never really supporting atheism like directly in the same way the Soviet Union did. But I think that that was a more of a gradual change, I think, and it sort of went hand in hand with the development of social democracy and yeah, like a welfare state.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think Anton brought this up, or maybe one of our takeaways was that when we look at secularization very, very broadly, it kind of all looks the same, right? You start with a religious society, you end up with a less religious society. And in between, there's this trajectory of economic development and stuff and other social change. But Anton focusing on Sweden and differentiating it from all the countries around it, which we would assume would be very similar, he showed that really they're all idiosyncratic, right? They're all different. Every country that's become very secular has a different trajectory. So, and we one of the great lessons from that is even very, very religious countries can become irreligious countries.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right, it happens. There are countries out there that had, maybe even still do have a national church, but are now incredibly secular or incredibly irreligious.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think yeah. So that's one of our 10 takeaways then is that even though you might end up in the same place, there's many different ways to get there. Basically.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I keep adding other little ones in between, other
Mm.
takeaways.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
these are the big ones.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
These are the big ones.
It's not limited to 10 takeaways, but yeah.
Yeah, it's there
Yeah.
inside. There's more. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's
Mhm.
like a little candy, and you unwrap the
Mhm.
candy, and you get into the middle of the candy, and there's a toy in
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
These, that's the kind of takeaways
Mhm.
we're dealing with today.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So, for number two, I had that there are many ways to be non-religious and to find a community. And we talked to a lot of people who are doing just incredible work all around, looking in different places, and actually building communities that are centered on not having a God, atheist communities. And I think that was fantastic. I mean, the big one that comes to mind was Lucian Greaves, who just did a fantastic job building the Satanic Temple, who are, I mean, how can we describe them other than punk rock? What can we say about that?
I guess they're a non-theistic religion, I think is how they they describe themselves. I mean, they have their own rituals that they do, but and sort of community building aspects, but they also do activism together.
Yeah. And I mean, interestingly, as a self-described non-theistic religion, they have ceremonies, right? Like they'll do marriages, they have unbaptisms, and they do a lot of things to bring people together. And that's powerful. Even though like mostly they're incredibly confrontational.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Who else did we talk to that did this?
Well, another case would be we talked to Carol Wayne White several months ago, I think, and she talked about this idea of religious naturalism, which is, I think, it's sort of about finding meaning in nature, in getting awe from nature, and just sort of the majesty of it. Even it's completely non-theistic again, but yeah, it's sort of about embracing nature and things like that. Another one was sort of related to that is the Sunday Assembly, we talked about with Jackie Frost, which is sort of like an atheist church. Was started almost maybe 10 years ago, something like that. Sort of these secular congregations that do things like sing songs together in their services and so on,
Yeah.
do charitable work together and
Yeah.
stuff.
The same way we found people who created ceremonies in a secular way. It was Thomas Lawson who started writing the secular eulogies and doing funeral work, right? Like this idea, not so much community, but creating a ceremony that lasts and is reproduced and becomes parts of people's lives.
And that's meaningful for people in a way that like a religious ceremony wouldn't be.
Yeah, especially when you don't want that. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't want to sit there and just think he would hate this, she would hate this so
Hmm.
much
Hmm.
because it's not what they wanted. It's not who they
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to keep things true to for that person, incredible stuff.
Yeah. So I sort of feel like in these different religious, or sorry, non-religious groups, I mean, it's not, I mean, maybe like being a Satanist or something may not be for everyone, but that's okay. I mean, it's okay. Like if there is diversity in what people want and need, I think that's like a healthy thing, I think.
Absolutely, and they're all out there. Like these are all ways. I mean, we can you Google them, you can find someone near you, and if there isn't anyone near you, Google the headquarters. Tell them you want to do it. They're out there and waiting to be either joined or built upon or created. Start your own.
Hmm.
That's good
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
Nathan, what else have we learned this past year? Feel like we're rushing, yet we've so much to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah. We learned a lot. Number three takeaway is sort of the links between politics and atheism. And in particular, one of the things I think that's been a theme is that there's some kind of relationship between left wing politics and atheism. It's something we've sort of explored in some of the episodes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We need to know more. It's definitely out there. We've talked to this has been studied, pretty evident, but there is we know that there are some was it like conservative atheists have a few issues in common with conservative Christians or just plain conservatives that still holds despite being atheists. Yeah, but there definitely seems to be this connection to left-wing politics that's underexplored. But there is also there are right atheists. That's not that shocking.
Yeah. But I sort of feel like it does seem that, well, let me think how to say it, like that atheists are overrepresented among left wing politics, and vice versa. Left wing people are overrepresented in atheist circles. Um, and one of the things, I guess we sort of saw this historically. We talked in one episode with Claire Stainthorpe, who is doing a project on 19th century British freethinkers and just the links with various radical kinds of politics, like small r republicanism, which is opposing sort of the monarchy in Britain. was something.
As opposed to American republicanism, which is,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
this is like the good kind. Yeah, I mean, depending on your perspective. Yeah, yeah. And I think, oh,
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
and we think there's a link there. There's a logical link between atheism and republicanism, that small r republicanism. But it's really like, I mean, she made it explicit, right? The way Kimberly Hamlin made it clear that there was this link between the free thinkers, 19th century atheists, and feminism, right? Where
Yeah,
that was explicit.
yeah. She had talked about her research on Helen Hamilton Gardner, who was one of the leaders of the suffragette movement for women's voting, like in the early 20th century. And like, yeah, it was a pretty clear link that this sort of free thought linked directly to questioning like patriarchy and questioning why women should be second class citizens. And I think this two things kind of work hand in hand, which is interesting. Yeah.
And it was tied to the scientific method as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
My
Right.
a
Yeah.
friend of mine went to Cornell recently
Oh,
and
right. Okay.
found her brain and
Uh
sent a
huh.
picture of it for me.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. If you're ever at Cornell,
Hmm.
you can find Helen Hamilton Gardner's brain, which helped prove that women's brains and men's brains aren't very different at all. They're pretty much the same. Yeah. And of course, leftism was for a long time synonymous with Christopher Hitchens, who Ben Burgess wrote about and talked to us about. That was, I mean, I love talking about Chris Hitchens. I can do that all day.
Yeah. That was. I mean, that was interesting, just because I think like in his case, I mean, obviously he was for so long a leftist and an atheist, but like as he became more explicitly atheist, or as a more sort of outspokenly anti-theist, he sort of moved to the being kind of a supporter of the Iraq War and things like that, which is kind of an interesting caveat or whatever to our theory, or counterexample maybe to our thing about like left wing politics and atheism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you can end up on the right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. There's a lot. It's a rich vein. Again, we could talk about it all day. And then I mean, the flip side of that is what Dr. Greg Scharzer, had to say about escapism. But he's also worked in, I think we talked about it. A bit of his ideas of no local,
Yeah, we
um,
did. Yeah. Yeah.
which is a completely left idea, right? Comes from these ingrained. It's a leftist critique. In it, God is just absent, right? And that's powerful. Which is kind of, I think, like the mode that we operate in, right? We live in a world without God. What is possible? And it's one thing to be fighting against God all the time, but once you eliminate it, what then becomes possible? And that's a liberating thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
politically. Which I think brings us to number 4. Actually, there isn't any connection here. There's no order. It's the importance of differentiating nuns. And this is one I think we kind of started with this, right? That when you look at the numbers, when we talk about nuns, not N-U-N, nuns, N-O-N-E, which is the terrible name that's been, I think, most widely used to talk about people who on surveys say that they have no religion, none. Right? They're not Catholic, they're not mainstream Protestant, they're not Buddhist, they're not Jewish, they're none. But one of the early things we learned, like, it's not just a straight, easy victory for atheists. It has something different. Even though the nuns are making up more and more of the population, atheists are still a small segment of it. Do you remember any of the numbers exactly?
I think it's about a quarter of the or in the U.S. anyway, a quarter of the population, maybe to almost 30%, something like that, is now none. So like not religiously unaffiliated. Yeah, and I think like one of the things. Oh yeah, so we talked about with Juam Navarro Rivera in one of the early episodes, but like it's interesting in the U.S. case, like how quickly that's changed in like 10 years. I mean, it's been a dramatic, really increase in the nuns population. So I think that's interesting in itself that it's like a very strongly growing segment of the population.
Yeah, yeah. But inside of it, it is odd that there are people who are spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we know that people who find either crystals or just something in the world larger than themselves that they attach themselves to. And I think there's also evidence that there are unaffiliated people, there are nuns who believe in God.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was talking to someone about this, and I can't remember how it started, but he like vehemently refused to identify as an atheist. I'm like, but do you believe in God? He's like, no, but I'm not an atheist because blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah.
So this is like that's kind of what we run into with this idea of nuns.
Yeah.
As an atheist, as someone who's very comfortable with that term, I know exactly how I fit into it. Lots of people aren't in that position or don't want to be in that position or are something other, right? There's still that swirl out there that we don't entirely understand. We need to understand. We need to know. I mean, we do know right now. It's important that we recognize when we hear 25 to 33% of Americans are nuns or religiously unaffiliated. It doesn't mean 33% are atheists.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's above 10%, maybe 15, but it's not nuns. Nuns have very different characteristics.
Yeah. And I think in the episode with Jackie Frost, like we talked a little bit about that as well. That like the obviously in some ways the category has of the nuns, it has its uses, but then it's also good to kind of like zoom in a little bit and look at specifically like atheists and agnostics and differentiate those out from those who are just sort of, they just don't go to church, they don't really interested in the religious stuff, maybe they're spiritual but not religious, but nonetheless, like they're not atheists. Like, and even I think I've seen numbers of like vaccination rates, for example. Like atheists and agnostics are very high in the getting the vaccine, and like near the bottom is like white evangelicals. Like that's one demographic category that's pretty low. But it's interesting though that the unaffiliated are also pretty low. I mean, like these are just sort of the generic unaffiliated, like not atheists. So I think there's something, maybe they're just, these people are just like, they're just not really interested in doing that much of anything. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Apparently, there's a segment that is so strongly evangelical. This is one theory
Ah, right. Okay.
we didn't talk about. They're so strongly evangelical they refuse to recognize churches. Like they're no, they're not part of that church because that church isn't serious enough.
Right. Yeah.
So that might be part of it.
Yeah, that's
We'll
true.
have to
Yeah.
know. Well, as more research comes out, we'll keep digging into it more.
Yeah.
Nathan, what's the next point?
Well, number 5 is one thing we learned when maybe we already knew this, but atheists can be moral.
No, really?
Yes. And
Where does it come from? That doesn't sound right.
yeah. So this was a sort of something we touched on in a couple episodes. One of the most recent was with Aaron Rabinowitz, and he put the argument that for moral realism, so that basically that we can know certain things and we can just say definitively certain things are morally wrong or right. For example, like slavery or something like that. We can say that that is morally wrong. We don't have to kind of like hedge about it and say like, well, to us in our particular perspective, it's wrong. Like, no, it's just like it's universally wrong. And I found that argument pretty compelling. I think when he
He
was
had a
saying that.
very big tent argument, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
It's ethics and morality. We can understand it from history. We can understand it from logic and reasoning. But it was different from, I think it was Carol Wayne White who focused on nature and said, like, no, we can figure out right and wrong just by looking at the world, by being part of nature. Like you study the world, you look at what's out there, how it operates, and from that you can derive moral precepts. That's how you can do it. And, I mean, it's interesting that very, very different tacts, right? Well, I guess Aaron would say, "Oh yeah, that counts too."
yeah, yes,
But
yeah,
the idea, like, you don't need, you're doing this without explicit authority, right? It's not someone telling you what it is. It's not revealed knowledge. It's not coming from a deity. People work together and figure it out. But I think Phil Zuckerman talked a lot about this too, didn't he? I
Yeah.
can't. How did he put that? Do you remember?
Well, his one thing I sort of was thinking about is his point about where we get our morals from, and it's not yeah, it's like it's not from revealed knowledge or anything like that. For him, there were four sources of morality, and the sources are we get it like through our brains have evolved in such a way that, like, we evolved as sort of social animals, so our brains are sort of trained to recognize the emotional sort of states of other people. So that's one thing. The other is in the early years of life when someone is caring for us, we learn morality that way. Another thing is, as we get older, we get socialized, and we start picking up on norms and behaviors and so on of other people. And then when we get older, we can reflect and reason about morality. And I think so. It's for him. It's not about it. Doesn't Morality doesn't come from God. It comes from these four main sources. And I found his just way of talking about that pretty compelling.
I
And
mean,
more, yeah, yeah.
it does make a lot more sense than that there's a magical man in the sky,
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
right? Like that. That definitely explains how we do it, right? And what our and now, if you combine it, it's what our role is in advancing it, because these things do change over time, and there's no arguing about that. One of the ways they change is activism, right? People being engaged with the world, taking real power. And I think point six is that atheist activism takes many forms. And they're all happening, and we can join in at any time. The Satanic Temple, I think they stood out. They always kind of jump out when you think about them because they are so in your face. Basically, what they had been doing is anytime a town or a city or a state was accommodating a particular religious sect, they would want in on the action. So if there's a town hall that's opening with a prayer, the Satanists want to give their prayer. If there's an after school prayer program, Satanic Temple is there trying to join in and get their own Satanic Temple group. It's fascinating work. It's really, I don't want to say aggressive. It's not aggressive, Nathan. Would you call it aggressive?
Maybe it's like provocative. Could be a good word for it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. It's
yeah,
highly controversial. It's
yeah,
provocative. That's the
yeah,
perfect word for it.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's the one that gets all the media attention. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's the Secular Coalition for America.
Yeah, that was Andrew Grossen.
They are doing real work in the halls of power, talking to people who make decisions, finding people who are atheists and running for office, recognizing what we as non-theistic people, irreligious people, want in our leadership and trying to get that power. And that's fantastic. And to help that, I think we talked to Sarah Levin, who is working with Secular Strategies to get people into office, to get more people involved, to get people lobbying. These are very political. They're very governmental. You know, it'll lead to changing the laws, which is not something we've talked about. But below that, outside of the state, there's just people who are doing it. Just building that community.
Yeah, and someone here was Mandisa Thomas, who we talked to from the Black Non-Believers.
Yeah, and I mean, she made a place that's incredibly welcoming, that brought people out of the woodwork, allowed people to be themselves. This very, very grassroots, bottom up community building, and people do it. People they can just do it. So there's all these different levels of activism from top down. You want to run for office, there are ways to make it happen. You want to change the laws, ways to make that happen. You want to just change your community, there are ways to make that happen, and that's pretty fantastic.
Hmm. And one other person we talked to doing interesting activism work is Monica Miller, who's with well, she's with the American Humanist Association, but also with the Non-Human Rights Project, which is doing really interesting work in terms of like helping to get animals like elephants and so on, like sort of greater rights, which is really, I think, which also kind of this focus on animal rights, I think in some way also overlaps with atheism as well, I think.
It's another thing we need to talk more about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Nathan, take us to number 7. What did we have there?
Number 7 is free thinkers historically have had an impact. So a number of episodes, I guess, we've talked about sort of historical atheists and free thinkers, and how basically like how their actions have sort of have effects today. How we can look back at their
So,
legacies. Yeah.
yeah, as you're a historian, what's really quickly, who were the free thinkers? What was their bag and what happened?
Well, I think it's sort of a term. It really comes in the 1800s, sort of a catch-all term for atheists, agnostics, non-believers in general. They were sort of I mean, they were religiously radical, but also kind of politically radical in some ways. I think, and many of the, for example, in Britain, the National Secular Society, for example, was founded in the middle of the 19th century, and that exists today. So I think a lot of the legacy of these free thinkers in the 19th century kind of continues on today. So we talked with a number of different people sort of about the historical stuff. Claire Stainthorpe, Kimberly Hamlin, and also Charles Develin, who was focused on some atheists in the 18th century in France.
But like it's weird that they don't have mainstream cachet. They're kind of unknown.
That's
But I
true.
think
Yeah.
they kind of live on. Some publications still exist. Their intellectual legacy. They inform everyone who comes after them. Invent the term secularism. Reshape a lot of British law, right, where it wasn't possible for an atheist to sit in the House of Commons as an MP. It's a big part of the suffragette movement is free thinkers, motivated by free thinkers, organized by free thinkers.
Yeah. I think in a lot of these big social movements, I mean, another example would be abolitionism, I think, where you see, free thinkers who are involved. I mean, obviously in the U.S., there was a lot of like religious people too, but I think there were also many free thinkers who are involved who maybe don't get the recognition. I mean, another case too. I mean, in moving more into the present is the civil rights movement. There were a ton of atheists and other non-believers involved in that, and yet I think the popular image is that it was mostly Christians, but I don't think that's right at all, actually. So, yeah. So yeah, I think the historical angle is also something that's been kind of a theme in the podcast.
Yeah, and they just keep coming up, right? Like anytime we talk about someone from 100 120 years ago, oh, this free thinker, that free thinker, talking about the intellectual lineage of secularism. Oh, free thinkers did this, or yeah, even the small r republicanism. Oh, free thinkers did this. What the hell is going on? Why haven't we heard more about them? It's a missing part of our history. We're learning about it.
Yeah, yeah. Just one other thing on this. Like I know in the UK, the group Humanist UK they're really putting a lot of effort into like a humanist heritage project, and I think it's important. Yeah, to look back at this history. You want to move on to number 8?
At number eight, we've got many kinds of political secularism. So it's the different types, and this is we've kind of touched on it a lot. We've talked about secular societies a lot, but this was really recently when we talked to Jacques Berliner Blau, who kind of broke down. He's got I think like 10 principles, and he recognizes 4 broad types of political secularism. So, speaking just about state relations to the church. And it's things that we think we know, but it starts with a pretty simple point is like, okay, you want secularism. What is secularism? And then we kind of stumble, right? We all imagine it's something different. And so he looked from like the extreme cases that's like Soviet style, right? And how it exists in China today to accommodationist models in India, which exists in other countries as well, where the state will pay and support religions, right? There are countries where that happens. To other places, like the US, where we like to imagine there is this wall between church and state. And the other one was La Cité in French, which I think is a particular and special one, but it's much stronger, right? Where it makes religion very personal, right? It makes it a private matter. It's not a public issue. And from there, it gets, you can get into the critiques of how these things actually work. But looking at these models, what he kind of set up for us is that, well, we have a choice now. There are aspects of like the historical dependency, but if we're going to move ahead and create a more secular world, or just a world where there's more secular people, for us, this creates a big opening, right? Where it's like, well, what do we want secularism to mean? And we don't need the answer. We don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I don't think anybody has the right answer. But we have the means to talk about it. And right now, I think we have every reason to be thinking about it as
Hmm.
atheists, right?
Hmm. I think that was one interesting point from talking with him, just about that. There's many different models that you can look at, and it's not like there's one particular one that's right and one that's wrong or something. Like you can sort of draw from them and see what works best, or what sort of things might be best suited to a particular society or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think. Well, anyway, the point is secularism is good. I mean, that ensuring, however you sort of slice it, but like, ensuring key principles about like state neutrality and religion and religious freedom and things like this, and then like how you come down in other issues, like in terms of whether the state gives like financial support to religions or something like that. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a choice, right? At a certain
Hmm.
point, it seems to be. Well, we'll see. It's one of those things that it seems simple and ends up complicated. It's a good problem to have. Figure out which type of secularism we want to have. It's much nicer to think about that than to go, oh my God, did you see that Supreme Court ruling the other day? I can't believe given churches this, religion wants to do that. This would be such an ideal discussion to have to struggle through. Which brings us to point number 9. Nathan, what did you have at number 9?
Number 9 is that atheism is at once very simple, but then there's also a lot of a lot of complicated issues within that. So it's obviously the case, atheists don't believe there's a God, so that's easy. Other things follow from that. We reject religious authority. We want freedom of religion,
And freedom
and
from religion.
yeah, freedom. Yeah, freedom from. Yeah, more importantly, yes. Yeah, and I think like atheists have sort of struggled, like, again, like to the previous thing about free thinkers. I mean, there has been a long sort of struggle to gain against religious authority, then also to get this freedom from religion.
Yeah, I mean it's something you pick up historically, little things here and there, like the atheists not able to testify in court because they're deemed untrustworthy. I think we've been talking about the toleration with Jacques, and one of the points that was made, it's like, look, you can trust anybody believes in God, but those atheists, those damn
Hmm.
dirty atheists, you
Yeah.
can't be tolerant of them. So this goes back even to like one of the earlier, early Enlightenment views of toleration. The first thing is don't trust atheists. It's crazy in that it's being someone who says I don't believe in God. That's the easy part, right? Doubting divinity, and then it from there it kind of gets crazy pretty quickly, right? Like when we think about who, if you have a moral question, who do you go to? Right? Like you're not where we get our ideas of religious authority, where we get our ideas of moral authority, where we get um, what we ought to do. None of it comes from religion, right? And talking with other atheists, one of the things that comes up a lot is that, like, this sense of why won't they just leave us alone? Don't want their rules. I don't believe in what they do, and yet they think it's okay to put their rules on us. And that is one of the things that I think it's really beyond atheism, right?
Hmm.
Atheism is when you figure out, you know what, there's no God. I'm moving
Hmm.
on from this, and after that, it gets complicated.
Yeah, it's about, yeah, how do you kind of fit into society, and like how do you sort of stake a claim for your own rights, and yeah, and like how do you begin to kind of construct a new society based on your own kind of values, I think.
Which, I mean, that might be a good transition there into the final thing that we've learned. What was the final takeaway from this year?
Well, so this is number 10. There's a lot of things that true atheists can do. So I think about halfway through, I guess, the episodes, we started doing this lightning round kind of thing at the end of episodes with guests, asking them about things, whether true atheists can do certain things. And we found that actually atheists can do a lot of things. Basically, true atheists can do a lot of things. And part of me wonders whether maybe we should change it to, like, rather than can a true atheist do such and such, change it to should a true atheist do such and such.
Well,
So
I
anyways,
mean,
something to
with
think about in
tongue
the new
firmly in
year.
cheek, I think that's what we're saying anyway, isn't it? Isn't
That's
that what we
true.
mean?
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like some people interpret it very like legalistically. Like yes, technically an atheist could do this, but
Yeah.
should they? No.
Should you? Should you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe that
yeah.
should be like the follow up. Yeah, just not very formal. Just go. Yeah, but should you? Should
Should they?
you?
Yeah,
Should you? Should you do that?
yeah. But I think, I mean, one of the takeaways I think from doing that is that there's a ton of diversity in like what it means to be an atheist. I mean, like it's mostly sort of tongue in cheek the segment, but I think it does show like there's a whole like there is a range of views about political and social questions and things like one thing that we've taught, or one common one, is like saying bless you after someone sneezes. And I mean, it is sort of like, yeah, I mean, it's funny, like how much religious language is just sort of embedded in everyday everyday language. And then it's like, what importance do you kind of put on this? Is it like, should you go out of your way not to say bless you and say gesundheit or something like that? Or is this just doesn't really matter? Like if it's just a trivial thing.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think it's,
and everybody
yeah,
thinks
yeah.
about it. It's always the most fun. It's perhaps a window to the non-existent soul of the atheist. Well, let's just
Mhm.
go through it, Nathan. We've got some.
Yeah.
We can
Okay.
use the same ones back and forth. Nathan,
Mhm.
can a true atheist worship the sun?
No.
Whoa.
I'll say no.
Why not? Why
Yeah.
can't you worship the sun?
I don't really like this idea of like worshiping, like, I mean, I'm trying to be more provocative, so I'll I mean, I don't like worshiping the sun. Like, I don't know what that would really entail. I mean, it's sort of, I think it gives like the sun kind of some like agency or something like that, which it doesn't have, obviously. Yeah. What about you? Can a true atheist
No,
worship the
if you
sun?
do it, right? If every morning you wake up and say, "Thank you, sun," after a few weeks, you're going to feel really good when you see the sun. Just to be thankful to the sun. You'll be sad when the sun's not there. Then it comes out and you'll be happy again. Yeah, it's cute. Yeah, having a connection to nature,
That's true.
I
Yeah,
think, is
that's
important.
true.
You're right about worshiping. That's silly. But for the sake of argument, yeah, let's just do it. Let's worship the sun.
Hmm.
It's fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
keep it going. What else we got?
yeah. Can a true atheist be a militant
Oh
atheist?
yeah, yeah. Let's be controversial, Nathan. Yeah, yeah. You can be a militant.
Yeah, and should they?
Should you? But should you? Should you? I mean, one of the things that we kind of learned is that, like, it doesn't, from the historical evidence that we have, militant atheism doesn't really work. So maybe I should change my answer. No, I stand
Like
by
in
my
this?
answer. I stand by my answer. You can be, but should you, Nathan? What do you think? Can a true atheist be a militant atheist?
Yeah, I think so. And should they? I mean, maybe. I mean, I think. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with like, putting forth your arguments. I mean, like, I don't think you don't want to be like harassing people on the street or something, but I don't think there's anything wrong with like stating your
Yeah,
arguments
but I think by militant
clearly. And
militant atheist,
yeah,
we should probably clarify this.
well,
I
oh yeah.
think I mean someone who sees religion as an unqualified bad that ought to be
Mm,
eradicated,
okay. Okay.
right?
Right.
And
Okay.
and
Well,
is
yeah.
working towards that end.
I mean, I think the only way is if you do it through sort of persuasion.
That's a good
I,
point.
w- I wouldn't want to support like the Soviet model or whatever.
Yeah, like the Soviet, they
Yeah.
had the little teams of militant atheists, the League of
Right.
Militant
Yeah.
Atheists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we should
Exactly.
bring
Yeah.
it back and just make it into a drinking club. Yeah, we're the League of Militant Atheists. Get out of our way.
Yeah.
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 Oh, we'll ooga booga. We'll take over your church, turn it into a library. That would be fun.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nathan? Okay, can a true atheist support monarchy, aka support the Queen of Canada?
Uh, yes, they can, but
But
should they? No, I don't think so. Yeah.
but they can.
They can though.
Do
Yes.
you feel
Yeah.
comfortable having a monarch?
It doesn't really bother me, but I would support like getting rid of the monarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah. To me, it's monarchy is based on like the right to rule comes from God, doesn't it?
yeah. I mean, I think it's probably like a little bit secularized now, but I think that's where the sort of custom comes from. There's something special about this lineage
Yeah,
of
if they're
people.
selected by God, therefore they can rule over
Yeah.
everyone else. And if you get
Yeah.
rid of God, you can't support monarchy. I
Hmm.
don't see how
Hmm.
you do that.
Yeah. So okay. So for you, you would say, well, can a true atheist support monarchy?
No, absolutely not. You can't.
No. Okay. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Should
Um,
you? No,
right.
no.
No. Okay. Um, okay. Can a true atheist treat religious figures as real as other fictional characters like Homer Simpson?
So you mean like that would be like saying like Jesus is as real as other fictional characters, right? Like Jesus is basically the same as any Homeric god or character. Like I guess Jesus is as quotable as Homer. They've both been around.
Homer
Yeah,
Sim-
they
Ho-
both.
Homer Simpson or the Homer
Oh, that's
the
right, Homer Simpson. Come
yes.
on, let's not get
Okay.
carried away.
Okay.
Not the
Yeah.
Greek poet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how. I mean, do we? What is real, right? Is Homer Simpson
Uh,
real?
yeah. um,
But like, yeah,
well, it depends what you mean by real.
right,
Yeah.
like treating God like a
Yeah.
fictional character who's in a book who says these things. I mean, I think don't we treat them that way? They're real in that sense.
It's definitely real in that sense.
Yeah,
I mean, like, yeah, and I mean,
Jesus is in a book. In the book, he's the son
yeah,
of God, and he does all these miracles.
yeah, yeah. I think there's like good reason. I mean, I don't know it too well, but I think there's good reason for thinking like Jesus was a real like historical person, but not necessarily. Well, I mean, in my view anyway, definitely not
Definitely not.
divine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But so there's the
Uh,
difference between like the historical Jesus and the Messiah Jesus, and we know one of them is a fictional character. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's kind of how we treat him, right? Like we know the stories, we know the things he said and did, the same way we know what Homer said and did. No,
Yeah.
not Greek Homer, Homer Simpson,
Right.
right? Like we know them in that way. So yeah, I think we do. I think we do believe in them that way already.
Hmm.
Yeah. Is that how you think about
That
them?
um yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think it's sort of I guess it's like any sort of like ancient Greek gods or something like that. I mean, I guess like there's some I don't know a ton about the mythology, but maybe there's some like interest in learning about the mythology and like maybe there's some value in it, like moral value maybe you can take from it. I'm not sure exactly, but um yeah, I think in that sense you could
It
yeah.
is kind of how we think of things like Zeus already.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Nathan, how about this one? Can a true atheist ask a religious figure for life advice or personal guidance? And here I mean a religious figure meaning like a priest or a minister or a rabbi or a monk, not necessarily Moses.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Um, I would say yes. You could. Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I mean, you could. I think you could. Yeah. I mean,
What are
yeah.
some like maybe examples would lay it out better? What are the sort of things you'd ask about? You'd be comfortable asking
Uh,
for.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but I mean, I think,
But the possibility
no,
exists.
no, I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, I know some like religious figures, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, who I think are wise and so on. So, but that I suppose that's in that case a more personal thing. I mean, that I know these people personally. So, in that sense, I guess maybe I wouldn't necessarily ask in their capacity as religious figures, but more of like people I know. Yeah,
Exactly, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. What would you say?
I think about it in the same way. It's like maybe
Hmm.
like I don't know, like if a priest had a nice car and I had trouble with my car, maybe he would know how to fix it, something like that. But not in their capacity as,
Yeah,
religious authorities.
yeah. No, yeah, exactly.
And like,
Yeah,
can you imagine talking to a priest about marriage? It's like, what the hell do
right.
you know about that?
Yeah, yeah, right. That's a really funny thing. Yeah, I mean, like a Catholic priest or something who's not married. Yeah, I know it's funny. Yeah, there's like the least qualified
Right?
to
Yeah.
ask. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and for the last one, can a true atheist eat a holy animal?
I don't think a true atheist can eat meat anymore. No, of
Okay,
course you
what do
can. All animals are holy, Nathan. They're all sacred. You can eat them all, but you should.
what do- what do you mean by a holy animal?
I don't know, like a Hindu cow, like a
Oh, okay,
maybe
okay.
a sacred goat. Does
Mm.
anyone have a sacred goat?
Probably, probably in one religion there is. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I
Um,
mean, basically, there's this sense of like, is it acceptable if an atheist profanes something holy? Right? We take something holy and just
yeah.
debase it,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
mean, I think we do all the time anyway, right? Just through
Yeah.
nonchalance.
That's true. Yeah. Um, this is not about a holy animal in particular, but I think, I mean, I feel like atheists should, if they were to go to a holy site or something, like they should not be disrespectful. I mean, that's my view anyway. Um, like they shouldn't, I don't know, vandalize some building or whatever that some other group takes to be as a holy place. I mean, I don't think that's a good thing to do. Um,
No, I think that sums it up, right? That you should be
mm,
respectful,
mhm,
or
mhm.
as respectful as possible. In even when our existence is insulting someone's worldview. But I mean, going forward, like these are the things that we've got in mind. Not just the can a true atheist questions, but for the over the course of a year to think through so much stuff, to talk to so many people. It's been fantastic, and the year ahead is going to be more the same, probably even better if you can imagine that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We've already got a bunch of guests lined up, and yeah, looking forward to continuing to sort of find out new stuff. I mean, that's one of the things that's been fun is like just talking to interesting people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially
learning
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
especially these days.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, and I mean, it's just like an onion, right? Where it's every time you think you get the answer to a question, you just find more questions. You just unpeeling these layers. There's more and more and more, and it's fantastic. And we're building the connections. We're seeing how history informs the present. How how to even just think about the world that we're in now. There's a lot to move forward on from what we've already learned, and it's nice to reflect on it to see how much we've gone through this year. This is fantastic. Um, so if anyone out there thinks it's if you've been offended by Nathan thinking it's okay to eat holy animals, please write your disservice down in 140 characters and tweet it to Nath G Alexander at the Twitters. Anything else we need to plug?
We wanted to thank our patrons, Lars, Debbie, and the AHS Plus blog. So make sure to check them out at ahsplus.blog. And Yeah, I guess we're also gonna so for patrons, we're gonna in our bonus segment we're gonna talk about this issue of coming out as an atheist, and so we wanted to ask, if anyone's listening and they have an sort of thoughts about coming out as an atheist and stories about doing that, definitely get in touch with us. We'd be interested to hear about it.
Yeah, yeah. Love to know what it's like for people out there, how it was, because you're really the reason that we're doing all this. We do it for ourselves and to hear our own voices. But
Yes.
really, I mean, big thanks to everybody who listens, especially to Lars, Debbie, and AHS Plus blog. Tremendous support. We appreciate it all. Be sure to like and subscribe. Smash those buttons. Pull that string. Ring those bells. Eat that sacred animal. And yeah, talk to you next time.